Welcome back, everybody, and welcome to Geek-Stew. Today, guys, we're taking a little bit of a different turn. Today, I'm starting a new series that prompted me after my last couple of videos on horror stew. I realized that there's a very big want and a need for the discussion of conspiracy theories, a big want and a need in discussion for legends and urban legends, things of that nature. But today, guys, I'm starting a new Monday series where I talk about specifically conspiracy theories from around the world. So let's do it today, guys. We are going to talk about the conspiracy of the disappearance of Johnny Gosch. Now, I will warn you, this story does include very unfortunate circumstances and very graphic instances. There are some theories about this individual's disappearance that range everywhere from potential sex trafficking to death. So I will give you a trigger warning in advance that this could be unsettling to some individuals out there. But let's get this started today, guys. Let us talk about the disappearance of Johnny Gosch. John David Gosch, born November 12, 1969, disappeared on September 5th, 1982. John David Gosch was a paperboy in West Des Moines, Iowa, whose disappearance without a trace between 6 and 7 a.m. on September 5th, 1982. He's presumed to have been kidnapped, and as of 2021, there have been no arrests made, and the case is now considered cold, but remains open. This is a story as old as time itself. Somebody is kidnapped. Either the police don't do enough, or there is nothing to do, and the investigation goes cold. They have no leads. They have no reason to believe anything that the media is telling, or quite frankly, there maybe isn't enough information, period, to even start the witch hunt. But in this case, John David Gosch disappeared, and to this day, there is no physical information, evidence, or otherwise to indicate what happened to this young man. That being said, this is a very interesting case because it has spawned multiple theories. There are three specific and very distinct theories that I wish to share with you today in regards to the disappearance of John David Gosch. Now let's start with the first one. And the first theory that I want to share with you is not as much of a theory, but as a story from the mother, Noreen Gosch. Now, I will say that there have been some theories that have been proposed with this, and I will kind of mention that in a moment. But first, I want to share with you the very unfortunate story that is of Noreen Gosch. Of course, Noreen, being John's mother, is probably very much so has suffered and is suffering from the loss and disappearance of her son. So there is some speculation as to whether or not this story is even factual. Either that, or there is a lot of speculation that this may have been a mean prank or some other device in order to either A, rile her up, or to somehow get their story in the media. But according to Noreen Gosch, she was awakened at 2:30 a.m. one morning in March 1997 by a knock at her apartment door. Waiting outside was John Gosch, now 27, accompanied by an unidentified man. Gosch said she immediately recognized her son, who opened his shirt to reveal a birthmark on his chest. And then, according to her, we talked for about an hour or an hour and a half. He was with another man, but I have no idea who the person was. Johnny was looking over to the other person for approval to speak, says Gosch. He did not say where he was living or where he was going. In a 2005 interview, Gosch said the night that he came here, he was wearing jeans and a t-shirt and had a coat on because it was March. It was cold, and his hair was long, it was shoulder length, and it was straight and dyed black. After the visit, she had the FBI create a picture saying she says looked like Johnny. That being said, the story of Noreen Gosch, obviously, it's not provable, unfortunately. Not to say that this didn't happen or that somebody didn't come to her house, but there are a lot of speculation in regards to what actually happened. As mentioned, there are things that range everywhere from this being a mean prank to Noreen just simply imagining it or potentially dreaming it. There is even some speculation that this did happen, and that maybe perhaps this is the product of an alien abduction. That the man that he was looking to for approval to speak may have been his kidnapper, but maybe even of extraterrestrial origin. Now, obviously, I don't want to go too wild because, unfortunately, this is a very unfortunate situation, and I don't wish to disrespect the situation or the surviving individuals, that being said. So, regardless, the story is very hard to believe. Noreen actually went on to a self-published book in 2000 called Why Johnny Can't Come Home, and the book presents her understanding of what her son went through, based on original research of various private investigators and her son's visit. So, in addition to that, Gosch had also reported that she had found photographs left at her front door, some of which were posted on her now website. One photo color showing 3 boys bound and gagged. She claims that a black and white photo appears showing a 12-year-old Johnny Gosch with his mouth gagged and his hand and feet tied, and apparently a human brand on his shoulder. A third photo shows a man possibly dead who may have something tied around his neck. Mrs. Gosch alleged that the man was one of the perpetrators who assaulted her son. Gosch later said that the first 2 photos had originated on a photo site featuring possible child pornography. In addition to that, there's a letter on September 13th, around the same year of 2006, sent to the Des Moines police, saying, "Gentlemen, someone has played a reprehensible joke on a grieving mother. The photo in question is not one of her son, but of 3 boys in Tampa, Florida, about 1979 to 1980, challenging each other to an escape contest. There was an investigation concerning that picture made by Hillsborough County, Florida Sheriff's Office. No charges were filed. No wrongdoing was established. The lead detective of the case was named Zalva, and this allegation should be easy enough to check out." So there was, of course, some follow-up to that, and it was proven that that was the case, that the photos were just a mean prank, and there was, of course, proof, and then, of course, there was a documentary in addition to this, who said that but basically that there were the 3 boys in the photo that were identified by the law enforcement, but there was one of Johnny specifically that no one was able to identify, and basically Noreen still believes that that picture is to be her son. So this is sort of the Noreen Gosch theory, if you will. A lot of people also have tried to pin blame on her specifically, maybe even going as far to say that she is somehow responsible for the situation. But most people agree that Noreen may just be unfortunately disturbed by the situation. So what I will finish with here is that, given the circumstances, there is unfortunately not enough evidence to support her claims. Unfortunately, Noreen seems to be a very troubled woman who, of course, very rightfully so. But I do find it very interesting that somebody potentially did visit her, and I think there should be at least an investigation worth trying to figure out who that was. I know that this was the 1990s, and there's potentially less camera evidence available, but this seems like a very disturbing situation where either somebody would play a prank on a grieving mother, or or B, that was in fact Johnny Gosch, and he is in fact still alive. There's another theory that arose by an individual named Paul A. And pardon me if I mispronounce this, but Paul A. Benaschi. The Benaschi allegations are as such. In 1989, a 21-year-old Paul A. Benaschi told his attorney, John DeCamp, that he had been abducted into a sex ring with Gosch as a teenager and was forced to participate in Gosch's kidnapping. John DeCamp met with Benaschi and believed he was telling the truth. Noreen later met with him, and said he told her things he could only know from talking with her son. He said that Johnny had a birthmark on his chest, a scar on his tongue, and a burn scar on his lower leg. Although a description of the birthmark has been widely circulated, information about the scars had not been made public. Benaschi also described a stammer that Johnny had when he was upset, The FBI and local police do not believe that Benashie is a credible witness, however, in the case, and have not interviewed him. Benashie accused Republican Party activist and businessman Lawrence E. King Jr., who also served as a director for the Franklin Credit Union in Omaha, Nebraska, of running an underage prostitution ring and victimizing him since an early age. In 1990, a county grand jury declined to charge King, finding the allegation to be carefully crafted hoax. Paul Benashie and Alicia Owen were indicted on state perjury charges, and a federal grand jury also declined to indict anyone for child prostitution, but did return indictments against Owen for perjury and King for fraud related to the credit union. The latter was accused of looting $40 million from the bank and was sentenced to 15 years in prison. The bank was shut down in November 1988 when it was raided by the FBI, the IRS, and the NCUA. King was released in prison from April 2001, and on February 27, 1999, the U.S. District of Nebraska awarded Benashie a $1 million in compensatory damages and punitive damages. Benashie had sued King, who failed to respond to a civil lawsuit, and thus a default judgment was entered against King, who ceased his appeal attempt in early 2000. That being said, obviously, Benashie had some very interesting stories to be told about the situation. I obviously went into some greater detail there about some of the circumstances surrounding Benashie and some of his associates, and definitely, in addition to King, of course, King had, if you will, had some very interesting dealings regarding himself, that kind of honestly made him suspect to some, speculation at least. That being said, Benashie, of course, that those claims have never been really filed on, or followed up on. And unfortunately, there was nothing ever done in regards to that. However, it's definitely not outside the realm of possibility at all that this could be a thing that happened. Unfortunately, child prostitution and child sex rings are incredibly prominent in the world. And I would almost believe this story over any other story on this earth, because quite frankly, we live in such a crazy world that if he was kidnapped, it is obviously possible that the kidnapped is now deceased, John Gosch being deceased, but it is also very, very possible that he was sold into some sort of sex ring or child prostitution ring. And quite frankly, I feel like there's not enough being done in regards to that. Even if Benashie is insane, it would be worth looking into and at least worth investigating. And at the very, very bare minimum, the FBI and local police could have interviewed him and determined whether or not he was in fact a credible witness, rather than disregarding him just based off of his stories. I suppose that won't be something that we'll see in our time or in our day and age, maybe one day far, far, far from here. But regardless, there's still one thing to look at. There's one last thing that, when you talk about Johnny Gosch, that you also have to talk about, is another actually interesting conspiracy theory that I'm only putting in here for the fact that I think that it is interesting. I don't necessarily believe that this is truth. I think that there is some compelling stories being told, but truthfully, I don't think that there's any way to 100% solidified believe or prove this without, of course, that of a DNA test. So I don't claim to think that this is the truth or make any kind of judgment passed on this, just in case anybody wants to bring that up to me for anything. This video is simply just as a informative tool to talk about, honestly, a very unfortunate and very troubling situation, in addition to possible conspiracy theories revolving around it. That being said, now we have to talk about a man by the name of James Dale Guckert. James Dale Guckert is an American conservative columnist, better known as the pseudonym Jeff Gannon. Between 2003 and 2005, he was given credentials as a White House reporter. He was eventually employed by the conservative website Talon News during the latter part of this period. That being said, Jeff Gannon is, if you will, I actually knew this person. I remember this individual from years ago as a White House reporter. The name didn't ring any bells at first, but after I started looking for pictures of him, he seemed very familiar. There is a theory that Jeff Gannon is indeed Johnny Gosch. The following is from a Reddit post from the Unresolved Mysteries, and the poster says the following in favor of this. This is a bit long, so bear with me. And that brings us to the Jeff Gannon conundrum. In addition to the potentially devastating legal battle over her book, Noreen is still trying to determine if Jeff Gannon is indeed her son, Johnny Gosch. Those who say there's not enough credible evidence to demand a DNA test which would finally resolve this issue are simply wrong. For example, Jim Rothstein, a retired NYC detective who spent 35 years in the force, much of it investigating child slavery and pedophile rings, asserts that the evidence is strong that Gannon is actually Johnny Gosch. To me, Gannon looks like Johnny, Rothstein opines. Everything just fits. The profile, the MO, everything. Then there's Ted Gunderson, a retired FBI agent who has worked on the Johnny Gosch case for over a decade. On Gunderson's website, his bio reads, prior to retirement in 1979, Ted Gunderson had over 700 persons under his command and operated a $22 million annual budget. His complete resume is here. Website. Gunderson says he is a credible source and that is certain Jeff Gannon is Johnny Gosch. My sources told me in the past that he's maintained contact with Johnny Gosch, Gunderson reveals. Let's just say he's in a position to know. The kids are all in touch with each other. It's a bond that they share. Gunderson concludes, the only way I'd be 100% sure is if there was a DNA test or if he admitted it. Noreen confirms, Ted sent me a videotape of his interview with his source, and his source said Gannon is Gosch. He said it without hesitation and without blinking an eye. He said he's known it for months. Noreen believes the man is credible. Gunderson makes it clear that Banashie is not his informant, but is quick to add Banashie informed him a while back that Gosch had changed his appearance. So, to brief pause. When they talk about Banashie, they're talking about the individual who said that he was in a sex ring with Gosch. That being said, to continue, in fact, there's even corroboration from John DeCamp, who weighs in that Banashie told me that the same thing, that Jeff Gannon is Johnny Gosch, and this bombshell formed Noreen. The birthmark on Johnny's chest is very similar to a mark seen on Gannon's chest in at least one photo. Gannon has a spot on his right cheek, in the same place as Johnny. The Rothstein, Gunderson, and Gosch Noreen quotes are from an article with Tim Schmidt, Johnny Gosch, Jeff Gannon, Hunter Thompson, and Unraveling the Troubling Tale. In addition to this, the bottom line is there is enough credible evidence linking Jeff Gannon to Johnny Gosch for Noreen and her private investigators to insist on a DNA test. The credible evidence phase of the case has passed and is now a case of obtaining conclusive evidence. To her credit, Noreen has always maintained that she didn't know beyond a shadow of a doubt if Gannon was or wasn't her son, but Johnny. But she'd like to know and believes she deserves to know whichever way it turns out. So this brings up a certain issue that this is a sort of a high-profile individual who is pretty popular in the media, being Jeff Gannon, and basically a conspiracy theory indicating whether or not he is in fact Johnny Gosch. Now, of course, there is plenty of speculation. There is plenty of proof both ways, I guess you could say, and I think that this is one of those situations where ultimately you can't force somebody to give you a DNA test. Jeff Gannon has no real purpose or reason to indicate, or anyways, that he needs to give blood or give whatever specimen he needs to give to, of course, provide some sort of sample. I think that it is an interesting rhetoric to have a conversation indicating that, hey, this person may or may not be Johnny Gosch, but we start going down this trail, and where does it end? How many people do we have the DNA test before we determine that this individual is simply not here, missing, dead? And while it is a fun, I guess, conversation to have, the possibilities that somebody could go missing at a young age and then somehow reemerge and enter into the popular media at such a ripe age, it is unfortunately very, very, very out there. I think that it is a conversation to be had that, of course, Noreen is still grieving, and I think that she is still trying to find a way to save her son. And I don't, by any means or any way, think that she's trying to be, malicious or evil. I just think that she wants something to put herself at rest. That being said, of course, there's been nothing to come of the Jeff Gannon situation because, quite frankly, I doubt that he wants to include himself in a situation that is so sensitive as this. But this is, of course, a very interesting theory to consider. I hope you guys enjoyed this video about the disappearance of Johnny Gosch. I tried to put on a very serious face and a very serious twist for this. Of course, the disappearance of anybody is something to be taken serious. This is, of course, not me trying to, in any way, shape, or form, make jokes or make light of the situation. This is just me talking about something that interests me. Of course, I think talking about things like this disappearance amongst any disappearance is a good way to start a conversation about potential issues that have arisen in our world that have opened us up to the possibility of things like child sex rings and trafficking and other horrible, malicious things. That being said, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys did enjoy this video and you want to see more like this, feel free to subscribe, give the video a like, comment on the video, and of course, as always, feel free to reach out to us on social media. You can reach out to us on Twitter and on Facebook. That is in the description down below, and as well at the end of the video. And of course, guys, if you want to join the Geek-Stew crew, feel free to let us know. We are always open to including more people into our crew and making our Geek-Stew team even bigger. That's always something that we're looking into. So feel free to reach out to us on any of those platforms with your interest, and we will get back to you. And of course, guys, stay happy, stay healthy, stay safe, and trust no one.